And so there's a lot of different underlying reasons for that, one of which is an inadequate healthcare workforce. In Indian Health Service, the average vacancy rate for physician slots is about 30%, higher in some, lower than others. And many times those slots are held by temporary physicians under temporary contract who are either repaying a commitment from a scholarship or loan from Indian Health Service or another source. And then once their commitment is served, they're back to a different setting, perhaps something that's more palatable for them, usually non-Indians. Now, there are many non-Indian physicians who stay on and take care of Indian people. So we should acknowledge those people because they're providing a lot of quality care for us. But I would say the majority of them are short-timers, and we believe that lack of commitment from people who are not familiar with the culture or not part of the people leads to this transient healthcare workforce and the vacancy rates. And it is our opinion that if we can fill those with Indians, we'll have people that will stay longer and be more connected to the people in our culture.
You know, I agree with you. I've been under the care of this tribal system or federal system here for pretty much all my life. And I've kind of noticed sometimes you get a doctor or somebody in there who just, not quite as we say committed as an Indian person would be, a native person. And, I've seen this across the nation and in Alaska, too. And so that really does make a difference. And I think our people can tell the difference and are more believing in a native person who's there to help them. I don't know, is that far-fetched? Would you agree with that?
Well, we have some survey data from the Association for American Medical Colleges that shows a substantially higher rate of plans for Indians entering medical school to practice in an underserved area. And also upon graduation from medical school. We don't have good data that shows that all those Indians end up back in Indian country. That data is still being accumulated, and I think as data comes in, it'll be more supportive of this position. So meanwhile, we've got those surveys, we've got people's experience, and then we've got our intuition that tells us that culture is the tie that binds and provides better care and a more solid commitment.
Right. Let me follow up my statement. I was saying, I've met some really fine folks who are non-Indian who are taking care of our folks. Sort of reminds me of that TV show Northern Exposure. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
The guy done his federal schooling and stuff with loans, and then had to repay by going to this village. But being that, well, let's just move on from there. But what is the paper now saying? What are the strategies, I guess, to recruit Indian students into it? I mean, there's such a monumental challenges like academic and geographical in many cases and financial. What are your top priorities there? What does your paper tell us?
Well, our top priorities, and if we distill down in our white paper that was based on the summit from the 2018 meeting, number one is reach students at a younger age. Don't wait till a student is in college and then try to interest them in health. We do that, admittedly, but for the best results, it's expose students at a younger age, even before late high school, middle school, even grade school, to where we foster an interest in science or math and the health sciences, and also providing academic enrichment whenever possible, and also frequent exposure to American Indian health role models. So many Indian students have the impression that because of either where they live or who they are, perhaps have been told that they can't do that. They're not able to do it. It's beyond their capabilities. And we have to fight that stereotype or that misinformation they've been given before, and start at an early age, even middle school and grade school. The other is to create a centralized information source to where we can process the data I was talking about, that we wanted to prove that the cultural connection leads to a filling of those vacancies in the healthcare workforce. Also expand financing options. American Indian and Alaskan Native households are on average about 30% less than the national average. And so many students would feel like even if they were bright enough that they simply, their parents can't pay for their medical education. And now there's so many scholarships and loan programs and scholarship programs that should no longer be a barrier. And we don't want these students to be completing medical school and then be burdened with large student debt. And so we need to expand financing options for those Indian students. And I talked about improving academic preparation, including to foster interest in the science, technology, engineering, and math programs, academic enrichment programs, either during the year or during the summer. The other thing that we've tried to do in a program we ran this summer was to increase cultural connections. Our students, some of them have a lot of cultural connections. They've grown up immersed in their culture. But we have a lot of Indian students that have no more than a superficial exposure through no fault of their own, and they're thirsty for that. I think the stronger we can create and maintain a cultural connection, the better chance we have of them coming back to Indian country to work and to help our people. And then I think that is the 5 primary things we talked about. And then address social determinants of health is actually number 5. And we're very concerned about adverse childhood experiences that can predict subsequent difficulties, either social dysfunction or substance use disorder. I think that trying to address those and use to the best of our ability will also help these students be able to create a strong path through school with constant exposure to role models as they decide what their path is going to be. And hopefully for us, we hope that we can create an interest in medicine.
Now, you mentioned earlier role models, and then again here just a few seconds ago. The idea that there are role models, I don't think is too widespread. People aren't really familiar with names or people or some of the accomplishments, but there are a number of men and women who have achieved wonderful things and done several things that are firsts in their field, so to speak. Do you recall any of those? Or are there some situations that come to mind?
Well, some of the role models that I had were some of the founding members of Association of American Indian Physicians. One of my mentors was Dr. Everett Rhodes, who was one of the founding members of AAIP and also a previous director of the Indian Health Service and a professor of medicine at the University of Oklahoma. I know he had a substantial influence on my progress, both as a student and also as a resident in medicine at OU. But there are other people that have had other influences, whether they be an academic position. But the fact that they are of native descent has a significant impact because it tells you that you could do that's within your capability, and just being able to see that person thrive, whether it be just in the clinic, whether it be in leadership role, or that as a family physician, or all things that are reinforcing. If you've ever had any doubts about yourself, you remember your mentor, and that helps you kind of remain centered that, yes, I can do this. Right.
There are situations that you can point to and say, yes, they achieved it, you can do it too, right? Now, I guess part of this and central to your study here was, of course, reaching students at a younger age, and ties into financing and academic preparation. I can see all of those dovetailing there. Now, you mentioned many situations where an appeal is made to students in a higher grade level, but that's darn near almost too late, isn't it? As you said, you got to get them back down in junior high, so to speak.
Well, I would say that if you can start, let's say that if we've been focusing on college students, the next layer to look at is late high school. I wouldn't say that's too late, because at that stage, some students are not even sure they're going to go to college, let alone which field they might go into or what they would want to major in. And so particularly the sophomore, when they can still change the curriculum and courses they're taking in high school, and perhaps, light a fire to where, this is within your grasp. This is how you get there. You can do it. we have this common background of our culture or our ways, or as sovereign nations, and that this is something that's going to be a total influence in your life and a chance to be of service to others. And I don't think sophomore, junior is too late to try to convince those students to go to college, that a health profession is within their grasp, and it's a rewarding experience. Because I know a lot of students say, well, I don't want to be a doctor, that's too long. They need to hear back from someone that time goes so quickly, because your personality is developing, your fund of knowledge is developing. You're hardly standing still for a number of years. You're moving, you're growing personally, and your fund of knowledge is exploding. And so that time races by, even in your 20s. And they need to hear back from someone at that time as they're starting to plan their life. And hopefully, at the very least, you can convince them to go to college.
Right. I know. I think back and found myself in that same situation, looking at, oh my God, if you want to be a doctor, you'll be in school forever, you'll be in tons of debt, and then you never know what's going to happen. But that's not the case. Now, if you were going to perhaps suggest some subjects that students might concentrate on when they're in the early stages of school, what might be some ideas there?
Well, the sciences, and it's going to relate to what your school offers. A smaller school system's not going to have the same number of course offerings. I don't pretend to be an educator, but I do know that taking math classes, even at least intermediate level, if not high-level math classes, algebra, trigonometry in high school, and geometry, those not necessarily always mandatory. Science with either basic chemistry or microbiology, could be others. Some high schools even have a basic anatomy or physiology class that can be taken. For those students that come from small school districts that may not have all those, that's when academic enrichment, say in a summer academic enrichment environment, can help you to be able to fill those gaps, to give you at least an exposure to that. And I say academic enrichment rather than a remedial class, because we're trying to enrich their academic background. It's not for advanced college credit. It's not to help bring, it's not for basic writing. It's really to help prepare you, because sometimes in high school, people are motivated to take the easiest curriculum that leads to the high school graduation. Graduate with the bare number of credits. Don't take the harder courses if you don't need it to graduate. And so the thinking has to change to where, no, it's not the bare minimum. I have plans after I graduate, and I want to prepare for that. So how do I do that? Well, I'm not going to dodge the more demanding classes. I'm not going to dodge the sciences. And I'll get some help with that if I need to. Many tribal nations offer tutoring or other educational assistance. So it's a mindset as much as it is anything else.
Now, you mentioned several reasons why I became a journalist instead of a doctor. I was terrible at math, things like that. But I like to talk to people, and that's why we're here today. Now, here's something that struck me that I really didn't see in the materials that I looked at. And a lot of these young people are in geographical situations that may make it more difficult. The first thing came to mind, of course, was the Navajo Reservation, where you got huge distances, or Montana, or Alaska. But that situation also exists here in Oklahoma when you get some folks back in the rural areas and where the roads aren't that great and things like that. Make it hard to get back and forth. And another challenge, I think, to your recruitment effort. How are you going to deal with situations like that when kids are in those kind of areas and things?
Well, what we're doing, and we really only have the summer to work with for the most part. They haven't moved to the stage of implementing academic enrichment alongside a regular academic school year, but we tried to develop and implemented last year our first summer immersion pre-health camp in collaboration with the OSU School of Osteopathic Medicine, the Indian Health Service, and United Healthcare. We conducted a summer immersion program with 20 students, mostly from small towns, that contained an academic enrichment piece, a very significant cultural exposure, as well as exposure to Indian health policy, historical trauma, that concept, and led to each student's examining their own thoughts about that. And then they also got to shadow healthcare providers at an Indian Health Service facility in Claremore, at 2 urban facilities in Tulsa and Oklahoma City, and a tribal facility up in Pawhuska and Osage Nation. And so we is that enough to make up for 3 years of going to school in a small town? I don't know, but it's a start. And if we can come up with other programs during the year, tribes may also have those same programs in academic enrichment, and that's ideal. I think the next frontier is to be able to develop those programs for those students that can occur coincident with an academic year in a school, so we can see how we can have less immersion, heavy immersion, but more frequent light exposure during an entire year.
The challenges facing these young people are enormous, of course, and one of the major obstacles, shall we say, is, of course, financing. You mentioned a number of grants and opportunities and programs, and of course, the student loan burden is a major national topic. Not only just our people, but everyone facing, six-figure loan debts, things like that. And I wondered if you might take a second and recount some of those possibilities that people can
Sure.
use.
Well, two of the big ones that we talk about a lot. The Indian Health Service has an IHS scholarship that basically pays for your tuition fees and living stipend. And after your 2 or 4 years that you've taken that scholarship and graduated and completed your residency, you pay back year for year while working at an Indian Health Service site. You can draw your regular salary, but it pays back your scholarship obligation year for year. So essentially 4 years working at an IHS site, and there are many, to pay back a 4-year, basically full scholarship. The other one that's actually, I think, probably more useful overall is the loan repayment program, where someone who's come out of residency, has a large student debt, can get up to $20,000 paid back per year that they work at an Indian at a tribal site. It's not just Indian Health Service; it's either tribal, urban, or IHS, and you get paid $20,000 a year towards your student debt. Now, if you got $200,000, that could be 10 years, unless the amount's changed over time. But that's a substantial assistance in having that paid towards that debt every year in your name. And so that's another way. And, of course, the goal is to get people to work in Indian country, and hopefully at the end of their obligation, they like what they're doing. They like the people they work with. They've got a connection to the land and perhaps to the culture, and they want to stay there. That's the whole goal of this, but it's also a beautiful way to be able to get through medical school and extinguish your student debt.
That's such an important thing now. Personally, a little personal story here. I have just recently had some surgery for repairing a torn rotator cuff. And while I was in the preparation areas and things like that, there was a team that came in to start to administer an anesthetic. And I noticed one of the women was a Native woman, and naturally the connection clicked right off the bat. And I had to know what tribe she was, and we chatted a little bit and found out she was Kiowa and Comanche, and was down from I think Anadarko, Lawton area around there. And she was curious about me, and I'm Creek and Cherokee, and my wife was with me, and who was Ojibwe, and we kind of connected on those levels. Now, can we discount that the presence of Native people? Then how would you describe it? How important is it?
Well, I guess at its basic, some people would say, gee, some people want to see. Some people may want to see a brown face, but not all Indians nowadays have brown faces, so it's beyond that. We have to accept that, okay, and that's not all of it. Maybe it's an immediate reassurance, But I guess over time, if someone shows their commitment and their cultural connection and just the way they converse and interact with the patient, that comes through, regardless of the color of their or complexion. Yeah. And we hope that will come through and will still be able to lead to superior care and more comforting, nurturing care.
Now, let me ask you this then. It's kind of perhaps off the subject of your paper and things, but many people, including my family, still have a connection with traditional medicine. The Indian doctors, as we call them. And, we've got some in our family here, and then most folks would swear by them. And, you see the importance of that around different tribes around the nation. Now, how does this program, this white paper, look at that? And if it indeed did, and what sort of respect might be there?
Well, we don't. I would have to say that all I can talk about is the Osage health system, but we don't have that component within our clinic. It's present out in the community. If someone feels like that they're ill or maybe have had bad medicine put on them somehow, they have that. We don't have that within the clinic. There are tribes that do, and I'd say it's probably more prevalent in the Southwest, but it's present. We didn't really focus on that in the white paper. I would say the cultural connection that I probably emphasize more are things that revolve around just life. Those rituals or ceremonies we have with birth, with significant accomplishments, and whether the way we address our veterans and take care of our veterans, the ceremonies that we have either related to dance or songs or celebration at certain seasons of the year, including namings. Those are the things that we live with every day, and so I try to emphasize those. Like, for example, this summer immersion camp, some of the things that we had, cultural pieces that are more relevant to Osage country, but other tribes. We had a demonstration, stomp dance, hand game, Indian dice, also drum making, song class, and then we had a sweat ceremony for those students, courtesy of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation's Sweat Lodge in Shawnee. So those are some of the things that we showed, but we didn't have traditional medicine as a big part of that. Something I think we could look at working in the future. Right,
and that indeed is kind of a specialized field with practitioners that a little harder to come by, I'd say. Anyway, I mentioned that because it's so important, and I've had these had it part of my life and things like that. Okay, as we're starting to wrap up here, are there any deadlines or events or opportunities coming up that prospective students should be aware of?
Well, right before I get to that one piece, I just would like to acknowledge United Healthcare has been a strong partner with AAIP, both within the summit, with the white paper, and so I want to continue to acknowledge their interest in Indian health and tribal communities. They've been a very strong and solid partner going forward, and so this white paper, they were a solid contributor towards getting it produced and distributed right along with AAIP leadership. But as far as the next immersion camp for us is going to be next summer. We just had the inaugural one. It's usually going to be in early July, so probably 10 to 14 days. This first one was 10 days. But I think probably most of our student programs tend to be in the summer when it's out of school. Like I said, the next frontier is what can you put in during an academic year so as not to interfere with that, to be able to provide that constant contact, to be able to help them lean on that a year. It's a little difficult to have those students for 10 to 14 days and then you don't see them again for a year, or they don't see you again for a year. So in a perfect world, we've got some contact with them during the year, and so that's the next challenge for us. We don't have any other conferences. Our AAIP annual conference will be next August, and the summit, which will be the third summit, will also be next August. At the present time, we don't have any other organized activities with regard to student recruitment or Indians into medicine.
Okay. Well, in case we've raised the interest of some of our listeners, how would someone get in touch with you if they wanted more information?
Well, I can. The Association of American Indian Physicians, again, is officed there in Oklahoma City, and they could be reached. Hold on just a second, and I'll get you that number.
Okay. And let me see here. I think that's about...
Okay, their number is 405-946-7072. And that would be the best place to find out about any current or future programs.
Okay, and if someone wanted to take a look at this white paper, how would they obtain that?
Well, we're just getting ready to put that out within the next 3 working days, and there will be a press release coming out, and we will have a hyperlink at the AAIP.org website.
Marvelous. Well, Dr. Ronald Shaw, thank you so much for this informative chat we've had. Perhaps we'll cross trails in person and continue at some point. Thank you so much for making some time for us, and thanks to folks at United Healthcare. And as I say, whenever you're in Creek Country over here, drop by.
My pleasure, Gary. Thank you.
Okay, Mado. This is Dr. Ronald Shaw talking about strategies for recruiting Indian students. We'll take a short pause here, and then we'll have folks from our language departments come in, and we're going to talking about in Mvskoke. Okay, welcome back to Mvskoke Radio here on The Brew, 1240 AM and 106.3 FM. Excuse me, I'm still trying to get over a minor head cold here, and it's still kicking my backside. Okay, welcoming into our studio, we have folks from our language department here. Let me let them introduce themselves in Mvskoke here.
Rebecca Barnett to West. Istijad Bonaga Mahayedu at Asedos.
Judy Pickering, Jehovah Kedos.
Okay, try that one again. I think the mic was down. Again?
Judy Pickering, Jehovah Kedos.
Okay, Judy, what's your title there, by the way? Your title. What do you do there?
I'm with her. I'm with the Eufaula Canadian Tribal Town organization.
Yeah, that's what we were after. Well, thank you all for coming in today. We appreciate you making time. The language folks have always strived to tackle a monumental task, and that's to teach more of our people our own language. Now, first of all, perhaps Becky, you could take a real quick second there and give us kind of a capsule idea of what the language department's all about.
Our task, well, our main job is we want to save the language. In our tribe, we've been told, and the guesstimate is 200 to 500 speakers left. And if you look at the ratio of how many tribal members we have and speakers left, I figure we're in danger.
Yeah.
The language is in danger, and that's one of our tasks that we decided to take on.
Yeah, now, in the course of my career, I've done reports on tribes who have lost the last of their speakers. Of course, most of them on the East Coast are gone, except for the strength of the Mohawks and some of those folks. But also across the nation, Bandans up in Alaska, the Kanaitse, they've all lost their last speakers. I mean, that's gone. And what they say extinct means just that,
It's
absolutely gone. Yeah. Now, Judy, how do you see your task? What is your mission, so to speak?
With our mission as a tribal town, we are concerned, like Becky has stated, about preserving the language. With a lot of our events that we have, we try to include all a cultural part of the Mvskoke people. And working with the language program, we're a partner in a lot of our events. But we want to make sure that the language, the preservation of the language, is there, and we do have opportunities where people can come, and sit in on some of our classes that we have.
Let me toss this question out for either one of you. It's been said, I think, that the southern part of the Mvskoke Nation is stronger in culture and language than perhaps the northern part. Have you found this to be true? Either one of you, have you observed that phenomenon, perhaps?
I think so. To a point, and I think it's because they live in bigger towns, and of course, down toward the south where I'm from, it's country, and that's where a lot of the ceremonial grounds and churches were. So, yeah, to a point, because when you go toward Tulsa and Glenpool, there's a few churches, and no grounds, maybe just a few down that way, the Uchis. But yeah, I think it's the tradition, culture, and language used to be stronger down that way.
Well, I remember as a kid, I grew up in Tulsa. That was pretty much the case. When my dad talked about doing things like that, we always had to go south.
Yeah.
And Dewar, Dustin, around those areas. What is it like in Eufaula? I mean, is culture a presence? Is it strong there?
Well, not like it used to be. There's few families there that still, have history, and there's still families there that do participate, in the ceremonial grounds. But it's not like it has been, in the past. It's and that's why we feel it's important to have maybe classes of maybe how to make blue dumplings and things like that. We're trying to preserve that and make sure our younger people are introduced to that's part of who they are. So.
The department has become personally more important to me as I try and relearn. And I still am a beginner. I mean, there's no question about that. But all of a sudden I find myself making connections. And I try and share them with my wife, who's Ojibwe, and she's interested in what's going on, stuff like, how to say fry bread, the important stuff there. And among our staff at Mvskoke Media, we toss about Mvskoke language a little more than we used to, I think, just for that. Now, is that a sign, an encouraging sign? Do you all think? I mean, do we see more stress, perhaps more importance, more value in that culture? I mean, is it an evolving kind of thing?
If you're using it in the media section, that is a step forward for us. And finding interest is hard.
Yeah.
So like when you follow Canadian contacts us and wants to do, that's interest. And your media, if y'all's tossing around using the words, that is a step forward for us because, some people thinks, I can speak, but they're speaking English.
Mhm.
And that's, I think, Mvskoke language is who we are. That's what we're supposed to be speaking. English is a foreign language. We're supposed to be, and our language is Mvskoke. So yeah, it's encouraging to hear somebody using it, people using it. That's our goal. Is even if it's just one word, use it, or you'll lose it.
Right. I mean, we're not fluent or anything, but there's a phrase or a word that fits in it. All of a sudden, you think, hey, gosh, that's kind of neat to hear that. You followed then, perhaps in the same situation? Do you see some growth, some encouragement there?
Yes, I do. I really do.
How's that?
We have a lot of people. We post all of our events in the newspaper, so there's a lot of interest, not just from the tribal citizens, but the non-tribal. They're interested, and to me, that's we're reaching out. That's our goal, is to reach out and let them know, we need to learn, our language. At one time, many of us, our parents were fluent speakers, but the children, along the years past, they forgot.
Yeah.
But it's there. We just need to reach out and grasp and just retain what's being introduced to, like Becky, she's our teacher for our group, and because of her, showing us and telling us, that really gives us the encouragement that we can do it. A lot of them feel like they can't. We just have to take the initiative on ourselves to go forward with the language and stay with it.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear things like that. Even if it's a small step, it's a step. Now, Becky, do you have some feel now for how the department is doing in recruiting students? I mean, the numbers. I know classes always start big and then pare themselves down to a few hardcores, like myself, I hope. But how do you see? How would you measure the progress, I guess?
Yeah, let's start out. Our progress, we're just happy to get 5 students. Because those 5 students is, 5 that didn't know the language and hoping they would learn the language and start using it. But if we can get employees, outside people to come in and just give it a try, because everybody's a beginner. We're going to start with kindergarten because it's a new language to our own people. It's a language that's different to our own people. So if we can just get people in there, even if it's 6, like I said, 5, 6, 7 students, that's a step for us, because interest is low. And we're trying to figure out why interest is so low, due to the fact of, it is a language. It is a different language, but it belongs to us. It belongs to us. And if we can just get people to realize it's your language, it's yours, learn it.
I've visited a couple of classes, and I saw where the kindergartners were better than I was. The Head Start kids were kicking my tail. Now, we've got a couple of things coming up later this month and into September, where you will take this effort out into the communities and sort of kind of test abilities there and reward the progress, if we will. First of all, you've got a language council meeting on August 24th in Eufaula. Can you tell me about that, Jane?
Basically, with the Language Council, we are in partnership with the language program, and they will be coming down and sharing with us words on, I think it was birds.
It says wild and domestic animals here. Honkas and supernatural creatures.
Yeah, that's the a list of information that will be given to participants who are attending that day. We just want to get things, just cover different topics of words. So, we selected this title because, it's something that's common to us in our world, the wild and domesticated animals. As far as the honka part, we all know about that.
Yeah, it can get a little scary, that, but it's really neat to to learn to simple stuff like Ifa, Bozi, Fuswa, and I've actually shared those with my wife now.
Good.
She picked up a kitten. She adopted a kitten, and it became Bozaji.
Good. I am happy to hear that.
Yeah, but it's Bozi Taco now, though.
That's good. See how he's using that, and that's what it takes.
Yeah, and I think the other one, and I'm not sure on the pronunciation, was playful. Abanada.
To play, yeah.
Well,
now see, that's what I'm talking about. You use it, and before, did you know any words at all?
No.
Exactly. And right now, with you, no one knows, and that goes for Judy and you follow Canadian people that didn't know a word, and if they learned that word, that's probably more than a lot of our citizens know. And if they can just come in and that kind of, to me, encourages people too. Okay, there's a word, cat. That just sounds so plain in English, but when you say it in Mvskoke, Boshi, cat sounds boring. Boshi sounds a little different. And if people can just realize that, our language is pretty. It's unique.
So is that cat.
So is the cat.
Now, the event you've got on the 24th at Judy is open to everyone?
Yes, it is. It is. And I'm so thankful for the Language Council, for the tribal program to come and be part. They're the one that has these language councils. They go to different communities, and we've always asked that we'd like to be included as one of the communities to come and bring the language council to our area. So it is open to the public, and we encourage bring your children.
Yes.
Bring your children to this. It's really interesting, and it's fun because we're together. We're learning together, and that's what it's all about, is that fellowship of learning.
For an event like that to pay off, so to speak, I guess the interest would have to be worthwhile. And how would you measure that down in your phone? Are people really interested, want to know, or glad this is happening?
I really do. I said we have a lot of people asking, when are you going to have your next session, and that tells me that they are interested. Like I said, that we tried to post everything in the newspaper, that inviting the public to come and find out who we are as Mvskoke people. This is our language, and we want them to share, be in part with us. To share the information that's given, because they too can speak to them another language for them. It would be another language for the non-Indian.
Right. Becky, the department actually travels around to several locations around Creek Country. Can you give me an idea of how big that effort is? I mean, how many towns, perhaps, or students, or things like that?
Oh yeah, we've had quite a bit. We've traveled to different communities. We've held spelling bees in different communities that ask for it, and the interest is there. People show up, and tribal and non-tribal members, people, they show up, and that if we can just keep this going, and keep and communities come to us and ask, we're there. We don't ever refuse anybody.
How many then
Oh gosh, we've been to. We've had teachers in Wetumpka. We've had teachers in. We've been to Eufaula. We've been to Holdenville. We've been to Glenpool. We've been to Tulsa. We've been, what our time allows us to do.
Sure.
We go there. Weekends, we go. We're kind of like a ambulance service. We're like we go when they want us, we go.
Emergency care.
Yeah, because it is, we feel like that's where our job is and where we belong.
Well, one of the jobs I think that you perform and isn't really discussed much is that you represent our people at different events around the nation. I know you've been to the Smithsonian and National Museum of American Indian, and your folks have sung and spoken. I guess, what does it make you feel like when you get to share that kind of thing with people who have never heard this before?
Proud. Informational.
Okay, it looks like my cell phone wants to interrupt us.
But, I let them know that we're still here.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go to Arkansas and do a presentation, and I let them know that we're still here. We survived.
Mm-hmm.
We went through their country. We made it through Arkansas and into Oklahoma, and we're still around. I've had questions like, do y'all still live in teepees? And I'm
you
like,
should have said, yeah.
And I said, no. We live in homes just like you do. We have microwaves, we have everything, but we're a little different. We have a different language, we have a different culture, we have different traditions than you do, but we're still here. And that sometimes that's kind of a shocking question.
Yeah. You think, good Lord, where have you been?
Yeah, but that's like saying, just like you said, some people are really, they don't really know about us. And that's what the language does when non-tribal members come into these language councils and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's showing them that we're around.
Well, let me ask you a question that's related to that. Again, in sharing our culture with folks who have never heard it before. Like when you were at the Museum of the American Indian, with so many native cultures there, and then you got this crowd listening to you singing Mvskoke hymns or perhaps demonstrating something. Did you get any comments from those people who live up there, the residents there? Did they ask you much?
Mostly we heard, oh, how beautiful.
Mm.
How beautiful that sounds. That was the comment, and where did these songs come from? Where did your people come from?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was more or less like, oh, those are beautiful. And it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Unique harmonies.
Yes, it is.
Okay, well, let's move on to this second little item we had here. It was a spelling bee. I understand this is like the fifth one that's you put on there in Eufaula, is that correct?
Yes.
What's that all about?
Basically, whenever we were thinking of ways to include our language, and we come up with the thought of a spelling bee.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I've never heard of a spelling bee in native languages.
Mm-hmm.
We got together and as a group, and we did come up with how we're going to present this and the rules and procedures of how we're going to carry it out. So the first year, it wasn't good, but the entrance, I guess to me, they felt like they didn't have confidence in themselves that they could do a spelling bee as individuals. Excuse me. But people are hearing about the spelling bee, and they're becoming interested. Because I told them it's fun. It's really fun. I said that if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. There's there's no penalty against you, for making a mistake. That's how we learn. We learn by listening and saying. And with these words, it does give an individual confidence of the language, how important it is. Because we do have a lot of fluent speakers, they cannot spell and they cannot write it. So with the spelling bee, you're learning along the way, and you're writing, and also you're listening to each word. And when by you listening, you're able to spell it out and create.
Are they hard words?
Not really. We have a list that we go by. In the language program, they have the list ready for us.
Okay. I could probably sneak by with something like dog,
Yeah.
Very good, very good.
Very good, okay. Bosey,
And we do have a word list that we give to people who are interested in participating in the spelling bee. We have a word list. And you just have to study, and we do have a first, second, third place.
Oh, yeah,
monetary.
yeah. Let's mention that. There's gas money there, folks. And it's not bad either for knowing your own people's language. And I understand there's a meal that goes along with it.
Right.
Humbuck's Okay, now if someone was interested in participating in that event or the council meeting, how would they get in touch with you?
You can contact Yehola Tiger. Information that we have for the study guides and rules. He would be able to mail that out to individuals who are interested. And that number is 918-457-6671. We'll be sure to get the study guides out to the individuals who are requesting. And we welcome everyone to come join us.
Okay, Mado. And now, Becky, if someone was interested in participating in a class, either beginner or perhaps a little more advanced, how would they get in touch with you, and what's the procedure?
Just show up.
Show up.
No procedures, nothing hard. All you have to do is show up at our office 12 to 1, 5 days a week. You'll either hit beginner or intermediate. So just show up. That's all you have to do. Just show up.
And I go to those classes, and I can honestly say they're very relaxed and easy listening and learning situations. Okay, what's the phone number again there?
918-732-7641. That's my phone number.
Okay, thank you, Judy and Becky, for coming in. We're going to have to go to some announcements here, but we appreciate it and hope that more people will participate in that. $250 for a first place. I could spell dog for that. Okay, Mado. All right, let's see. Let's get on to some of these announcements here. We've got a pile of them here. First of all, Wednesday's the last day for the latest heat wave. You got to be careful out there. The worst conditions are along the lower Arkansas River in west central Arkansas. It can knock you down if you're not careful, folks, so please stay hydrated, watch your heat, and take care of yourself. Muskogee Nation Youth Council presents the Youth Vote Candidate Forum. That's on August the 24th from 2 to 5 at the Okmulgee Community Center here in Okmulgee with light refreshments, 549-2557. Okay, the Mvskoke Creek Nation's Pink Party is coming up, the 17th Annual Pink Party, Breast Cancer Awareness. That's Tuesday, October 29th. You got a bit of a wait there. It'll be at the Glenpool Conference Center, and you might want to check that one out. Okay, and next week, and coming up soon, is the Diabetes Awareness Summit. We'll have some guest speakers from there coming in to talk about us, but that summit annual event will be taking place on September 4th, also at the Glenpool Conference Center, a nice place to go, with a full schedule of events and participation and even lunch, fun. And you can even learn to dance the bachata from our former co-host here, Mr. Darren DeLon. Okay, well, I think that's probably everything we can do. Again, the Mvskoke Spelling Bee, September 7th down in Eufaula, and their council meeting on August 24th, also in Eufaula. Good reasons to go down to Eufaula. So we want to thank you so much for being with us here today. But Mabo Hedget's got Gary Fife, Jahu Jeffgado.